When we're young, we dream of the future. Those dreams can motivate us to try harder, become something better, or even do something glorious. Whether through athletics, heroics, or success, the desire to leave a mark on life can be strong. In 1939, this young man made some dreams come true in high school as a left end for the Wyoming-Michigan Vikings football dream team with a winning season. His work as a machinist for Nash Calvinator in 1941 and 42 might not have been his dream job, but it did allow him to achieve some of the freedom that all young men crave at times. While we may never know all the ideals and dreams that this man, my grandfather, may have had when he was young, we can imagine that some of them led him to become part of something greater than himself, affecting not only his life, but the lives of many of us who would come after that historic time. The year was 1942. The young man, Louis Roossien, born in 1922, was now 20 years old. The year before, World War II had come to America. Whether following his dreams or a sense of duty, on October 20, Louis volunteered for service in the United States Naval Reserve. By November 6, he made his way to Detroit to enlist and start his active service. 3 days later, he was at the U.S. Naval Training Station in Great Lakes, Illinois, and that month likely had his first Thanksgiving meal away from home there. In December 1942, he completed Navy boot camp, graduating as honor man of his company of 130 men. After taking aptitude tests, Louis was selected to attend one of the Navy service schools with specialized training as a welder. But Louis wouldn't be starting his life as a Navy man alone. On May 1, 1943, he fulfilled one of his dreams, marrying his sweetheart Arlene Vauchel at her parents' home in Grand Rapids, Michigan. When he completed his welding and ship-fitting training in May of 1943, he was promoted to Apprentice Petty Officer First Class. Next, he was assigned to begin an advanced welding class at the San Diego Naval School, so he and his new bride packed up and moved to California. In July of 43, he completed the training and was assigned to the attack transport ship USS Wayne as shipfitter third class. He reported on board the Wayne on August 27. In November, he was promoted to shipfitter second class. The ship prepared to head out to war, and that month Louis had another Thanksgiving meal, courtesy of the Navy. The Wayne began training exercises around San Diego with landing teams of Marines. In January of 1944, the time had come for the ship to leave the California coast. They sailed in a convoy headed for Louis's first action of the war, to join in the invasion of the Marshall Islands. She arrived in Hawaii on January 21 and 2 days later was bound for the Marshalls. Arriving off Kwajalein on January 30 as part of a landing force, Wayne unloaded her Marines who attacked the beaches. The ship returned to the transport area the next morning to unload cargo for the troops. On February 1, Wayne left the Marshalls and headed south for the area around Efate Island. On February 21, 1944, Louis was transferred from the Wayne for more training as a Navy welder. He likely flew by Pan American Clipper from Efate Island to Pearl Harbor, and on March 5 he sailed from Hawaii to California. He had leave with Arlene for a few weeks and was able to go back to Michigan to visit family. But soon he had to continue his training, doing a 6-week advanced welding course at the Naval Repair Base, which started April 1 in San Diego. So he and Arlene traveled back to California to the house they lived in, not far from the naval base. At some point in mid-1944, Lewis was assigned to one of the most historic ships in the Pacific Fleet, the USS Colorado. She was the only Pacific Fleet battleship not in Pearl Harbor during the December 7, 1941 attack. The ship was in Bremerton, Washington, for a refit which was cut short when she suddenly became the only fighting battleship left on the West Coast. She began the war by defending San Francisco Bay from a possible Japanese invasion. The ship then sailed on to the South Pacific to stem the Japanese advancement and support U.S. military landings there. In August of 1944, a damaged USS Colorado sailed back into Puget Sound with new damage to be repaired and a refit to complete. With his final training finished the end of July, Lewis and Arlene likely moved out of their San Diego place. With Arlene being several months pregnant, Lewis probably took leave to get her back to Michigan to be with her parents. But time was short. The Colorado was in a rush to be repaired and refit, so Lewis's new skill as an advanced welder might have demanded that he head out to the Puget Sound, Washington area as quickly as possible to help with the work. On October 3, 1944, the Colorado was conducting post-refit trials at Puget Sound, with the ship running at full speed. Arlene was also going through her own trial, preparing to give birth. Lewis was able to obtain emergency leave for the event with the help of his Navy chaplain, who told him, "Well, you were there when the keel was laid, so you should be there when the ship is launched." So Lewis quickly headed back to Michigan for the birth of Lewis Jr. and to see his own father become a grandfather. During that time, the Colorado left Puget Sound and on October 9 arrived in San Pedro for a week-long training cruise along the coastline. Lewis had likely hurried back to California by then, joining the ship either in San Pedro or connecting with it later in Pearl Harbor. Either way, at Pearl Harbor, he was on board the Colorado for a second tour of action in the Pacific. On the 6th of November, they got underway from Pearl for the South Pacific. They were now headed to risk their lives in places most of them had probably never heard of: Leyte, Mindoro, Roossien, Okinawa. The ship was escorted by 2 destroyers. Sometimes crowds would form on deck when the ships transferred items between them, and often the Colorado would dispense not only fuel, but treats like ice cream to her escorting ships. In mid-November, the Colorado arrived in the Philippines at Ulithi, the largest naval base of World War II, and the real action began. While President Roosevelt declared November 23, 1944, as a day of national thanksgiving, urging the nation to pray for peace, the USS Colorado had to fire her guns on the enemy. But Lewis and crew were able to at least have a Thanksgiving meal on board. From November to December, the ship, almost always part of a naval group, provided gunfire for troops fighting ashore at Leyte Gulf, where the enemy was making an all-out attempt to destroy the American fleet in that area. During that time, the ship went to general quarters often as kamikaze plane and torpedo attacks were a frequent occurrence. On November 27, a deadly day for the ship, men rushed to battle stations wearing helmets and life jackets as kamikaze attacks started again. In one attack, a leading plane was shot down, but the second one hit the ship, causing a large explosion where 19 sailors on the starboard side of the ship died, and 72 were wounded. Lewis told the story that he had been able to trade duties with a man who preferred working below decks for fear of those kamikaze attacks. Lewis preferred the open air. He was part of the portside watch for the ship, and so may have been sent over to the starboard side when it was hit to help his fellow sailors. Although I never heard my grandfather talk about it, one of his shipmates recalled in an interview that these were the times that any dreams the young men may have brought with them of the glories of war were crushed. The attacks on the ship wounded or even blew apart many of their shipmates around them, with a horrendous cleanup when the attack was over. There were times for recuperation. On December 4, the crew was able to watch a movie and get mail for the first time in weeks. Despite the damage from the kamikaze strikes, the Colorado stayed in the combat zone and participated in the bombardment of Mindoro just 2 weeks later in the middle of December. She eventually withdrew to the naval base at Manus Island near New Guinea to receive more extensive repairs, and celebrated Christmas there. These photos of Lewis getting some tropical recreation may have been taken during that time. In January of 1945, the USS Colorado and the other old battleships, as they were respectfully called, sailed to Roossien for the invasion bombardment operation in Lingayen Gulf, and some of the heaviest fighting yet. One log entry on the 6th stated they were so busy, they served us Spam sandwiches on our stations during noon, then all hell broke loose. The air attacks started. They were the Japs' suicide boys. On January 9, the Colorado began heavy bombardment of islands around Lingayen Gulf. During the confusion of massive firing on enemy planes, the ship had a bad moment when it suddenly looked as if every U.S. ship was aiming at the Colorado. It ended up being hit by friendly fire, which killed 18 and injured 51. The next day, they had a sea burial for the dead. The ship had started patrolling a very rough and much colder South China Sea, and the next week U.S. forces recaptured Manila. In February, they took a break for a while and sailed southeast to Ulithi in the Caroline Islands. On March 21, they got underway for Okinawa, what was hoped to be the final step and launching point towards the invasion of the Japanese home islands. In the month of March, the day would usually begin with 5:30 a.m. Japanese suicide attacks on the ship. The threats now came not only from aircraft and subs, but from suicide motorboats, and even Japanese hiding under boxes floating in the water with explosives. As they continued losing ground, the Japanese poured every effort into the suicidal attacks in the Okinawa area. On April 13, the ship received word about the death of President Roosevelt, while they were reloading their ammo, and at the same time receiving enemy suicide attacks. Many fires on board from attacks and mechanical failures must have kept welders like Lewis busy during these times. Many entries in a row in the Colorado's logbook in April and May highlighted the turmoil of those days. Fired all day and night, fired all day and night, on and on. On May 8, the ship celebrated VE Day with a salute from each big gun, but otherwise was silent during a pouring rain. The ship fired all day again for one more day, and on the next day, May 21, 1945, the fighting campaigns finally came to an end for the USS Colorado. The ship had fired her 16-inch guns incessantly during the pre-invasion bombardment of Okinawa. The ship holds the record of 37 days in a row of firing at an enemy, and 24 direct enemy air attacks in 62 days, both while at Okinawa. The ship fired over 4 million pounds of ammunition during that operation. The ship then made stops at Karama-Redo, Okinawa, and then at Leyte for some well-deserved breaks. The ship was painted and repairs were made, and the crew was finally able to catch up on sleep and relaxation. The combat for the Navy had finally diminished, and patrolling the China Sea was the duty for the Colorado. All on board were hoping and praying for Japan to give up. On August 19, Lewis and his shipmates received word of the Japanese surrender. All the guns on the beach near the ship opened up, and flares were shot in celebration. Finally, on August 24, the ship sailed from Okinawa for Sagami Bay, Japan, for the official Japanese surrender, arriving on August 27. A single Japanese destroyer escorted them in. On the way into the bay, said one sailor, no matter where you looked, all you could see was Allied ships. The crew took in the view of Mount Fuji and waited for the surrender event. Although they could now watch movies and relax a little, the ship was on standby in case the Japanese changed their minds. There was some time for sailors to actually set foot on Japan and spend a little money in the nearby port of Yokohama. When she moved nearby to Tokyo Bay on September 1, the Colorado was tied up within sight of the USS Missouri, where the surrender signing by Japan took place. Then on the 20th, the ship left Tokyo and sailed back to Okinawa. Now the drills were much calmer. Flag hoist during the day and searchlight practice at night. When they arrived at Okinawa, Lewis's time with the USS Colorado had come to an end. As part of Operation Magic Carpet, getting American military home as quickly as possible, he was transferred to the cruiser USS Amsterdam, which was picking up servicemen to take back to the States, something the Colorado would also do later. The Amsterdam left Okinawa for Pearl Harbor, and then delivered Lewis and others from the Colorado to Portland, Oregon, on October 15, 1945. From there, on the next day, he sent this telegram to Arlene. Arrived in States yesterday. Will call you tonight at your folks. Tell my folks, love, Louie. He was then transferred back to Great Lakes, Illinois, and honorably discharged from the United States Navy. Then from Chicago on October 24, he sent one more telegram home, telling Arlene that their long separation was almost at an end. When he arrived at the station in Grand Rapids that night at 10 p.m., his young wife picked him up to take him home for good. He was likely forever changed by his sometimes traumatic experiences in Navy service, but the dreams he shared with his sweetheart remained, and he credited keeping those alive to Arlene. He had written to her often during the war, and once said, "Sweetheart, thank you for helping me to fill out my life. Thank you for helping me to fulfill all our dreams." Although the USS Colorado was soon to retire from service, and Lewis was now honorably discharged from the Navy, his most important jobs in life may still have been to come. Continuing his life with Arlene in Wyoming, Michigan, as a church leader, a supervisor of men, a husband, and as a father.